The Basilica of the Sacred Heart of Paris, commonly known as Sacré-Cœur Basilica and often simply Sacré-Cœur, is a Roman Catholic church and minor basilica, dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, in Paris, France. A popular landmark, the basilica is located at the summit of the Butte Montmartre, the highest point in the city. Sacré-Cœur is a double monument, political and cultural, both a national penance for the defeat of France in the 1871 Franco-Prussian War and the Socialist Paris Commune of 1871 crowning its most rebellious neighborhood, and an embodiment of conservative moral order, publicly dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, which was an increasingly popular vision of a loving and sympathetic Christ. The Sacré-Cœur Basilica was designed by Paul Abadie. Construction began in 1875 and was finished in 1914. It was consecrated after the end of World War I in 1919. Basilique of the Sacré-Cœur. The inspiration for Sacré-Cœur's design originated on September 4, 1870, the day of the proclamation of the Third Republic, with a speech by Bishop Fournier attributing the defeat of France in the Franco-Prussian War of 1870 to a divine punishment after a century of moral decline since the French Revolution, in the wake of the division in French society that arose in the decades following that revolution, between devout Catholics and legitimist royalists on one side, and Democrats, secularists, socialists and radicals on the other. This schism became particularly pronounced after the Franco-Prussian War and the ensuing uprising of the Paris Commune of 1870-71. Though today the basilica is asserted to be dedicated in honor of the 58,000 who lost their lives during the war, the decree of the Assemblée Copyright Nationale, July 24, 1873, responding to a request by the Archbishop of Paris by voting its construction, specifies that it is to expiate the crimes of the Commune. Montmartre had been the site of the Commune's first insurrection, and the Communards had executed Georges Darboy, Archbishop of Paris, who became a martyr for the resurgent Catholic Church. His successor Guibert, climbing the Butte Montmartre in October 1872, was reported to have had a vision, as clouds dispersed over the panorama: it is here where the martyrs are, it is here that the Sacred Heart must reign so that it can beckon all to come. In the moment of inertia following the resignation of the government of Adolphe Thiers, May 24, 1873, Frère Section Warpie, Bishop of Poitiers, expressed the national yearning for spiritual renouveau. The hour of the Church has come, that would be expressed through the government of the moral order of the Third Republic, which linked Catholic institutions with secular ones, in a project of religious and national renewal, the main features of which were the restoration of monarchy and the defense of Rome within a cultural framework of official piety, of which Sacré-Cœur is the chief lasting triumphalist monument. The decree voting its construction as a matter of public utility, July 24, followed close on Thiers' resignation. The project was expressed by the Church as a national vow, and financial support came from parishes throughout France. The dedicatory inscription records the basilica as the accomplishment of a vow by Alexander le Gentle and Hubert Réhault de Fleury, ratified by Joseph Hippolyte Guibert, Archbishop of Paris. The project took many years to complete. Construction: a law of public utility was passed to seize land at the summit of Montmartre for the construction of the basilica. Architect Paul Abadie designed the basilica after winning a competition over 77 other architects. With delays in assembling the property, the foundation stone was finally laid June 16, 1875. Passionate debates concerning the basilica were raised in the Conseil Municipal in 1880, where the basilica was called an incessant provocation to civil war, and it was debated whether to rescind the law of 1873 granting property rights, an impracticable proposition. The matter reached a Chamber of Deputies in the summer of 1882, in which the basilica was defended by Archbishop Guibert, while Georges Clemenceau argued that it sought to stigmatize the revolution. The law was rescinded, but the basilica was saved by a technicality, and the bill was not reintroduced in the next session. A further attempt to halt the construction was defeated in 1897, by which time the interior was substantially complete and had been open for services for 6 years. The overall style of the structure shows a free interpretation of Romano-Byzantine features, an unusual architectural vocabulary at the time, which was a conscious reaction against the neo-Baroque excesses of the Palais Garnier, which was cited in the competition. Many design elements of the basilica symbolize nationalist themes. The portico, with its 3 arches, is adorned by 2 equestrian statues of French national saints Joan of Arc and King St. Louis IX, both executed in bronze by Hippolyte Lefebvre. And the 19-ton Savoyard bell, cast in 1895 in Annecy, alludes to the annexation of Savoy in 1860. Abbadi died not long after the foundation had been laid, in 1884, and 5 architects continued with the work: Honoré copyright Domet, Jean-Charles Laisner copyright, Henri Pierre-Marie Rallin, Lucien Marne, and Jean-Louis Hulot. The basilica was not completed until 1914, when war intervened. The basilica was formally dedicated in 1919, after World War I, when its national symbolism had shifted. Construction costs, estimated at 7 million French francs and drawn entirely from private donations, were expended before any above-ground visible structure was to be seen. A provisional chapel was consecrated March 3, 1876, and pilgrimage donations quickly became the mainstay of funding. Donations were encouraged by the expedient of permitting donors to purchase individual columns or other features as small as a brick. It was declared by the National Assembly that the state had the ultimate responsibility for funding. Muted echoes of the basilica's tortured history are still heard, geographer David Harvey has noted. In February 1971, demonstrators pursued by the police took refuge in the basilica and called upon their radical comrades to join them in occupying a church built upon the bodies of communards in order to efface that red flag that had for too long floated over Paris, as their leaflets expressed it. The Basilica Sacre copyright Carré is built of travertine stone quarried in Car-Saint-Olandon, France. This stone constantly exudes calcite, which ensures that the basilica remains white even with weathering and pollution. A mosaic in the apse, entitled Christ in Majesty, created by Luc-Olivier Mersenne, is among the largest in the world. The basilica complex includes a garden for meditation, with a fountain. The top of the dome is open to tourists and affords a spectacular panoramic view of the city of Paris, which is mostly to the south of the basilica. The use of cameras and video recorders is forbidden inside the basilica. The organ The basilica is home to a large and very fine pipe organ built by Aristide Cavela copyright Cole for a private home in Biarritz, composed of 109 ranks and 78 speaking stops spread across 4 61-note manuals and the 32-note talboard, spread across 3 expressive divisions. The organ was ahead of its time, containing multiple expressive divisions and giving the performer considerable advantages over other even larger instruments of the day. It was almost identical to the instrument in Sheffield's Albert Hall, destroyed by fire in 1937. However, when installed in Paris in 1905 by Cavela copyright Cole's successor and son-in-law, Charles Mutin, it lost its fine case for a much plainer one. Role in Catholicism. In response to requests from French bishops, Pope Pius IX promulgated the Feast of the Sacred Heart in 1856. The basilica itself was consecrated on October 16, 1919. Since 1885, the Blessed Sacrament has been continually on display in a monstrance above the high altar. Perpetual adoration of the Blessed Sacrament has continued uninterrupted in the basilica since 1885. Because of this, tourists and others are asked to dress appropriately when visiting the basilica and to observe silence as much as possible, so as not to disturb persons who have come from around the world to pray in this place of pilgrimage. Access. The basilica is accessible by bus. Buses 30, 31, 80, and 85 can be taken to the bottom of the hill of the basilica. Line 12 of the metro can be taken to Jules Jaffrin station and visitors can then change to the Montmartre bus and disembark at Place du Tertre. Line 2 or 12 of the metro can be taken to Pigalle station where visitors can change to the Montmartre bus and disembark at Norvins, or to Anvers station, which gives easy access to the steps or the funicular car that lead directly to the basilica. Sacre copyright Carré is open from 0600 to 22:30 every day. The dome is accessible from 0900 to 1900 in the summer and 1800 in the winter. Notes. External links. Official site of Basilique du Sacre Copyright Paris, Northwestern University Library. Briefings, Fall 2005, Scott Kraft, Sacre Copyright on Montmartre. Official site of Montmartre, panoramic view, virtual tour 360 degrees in full screen, photo from a terrace in Paris, Le Sacre Copyright further reading, Jacques Benest, Le Sacre Coeur de Montmartre de 1870 à nos jours 1992. A Cultural History from the Point of View of a Former Chaplain. Yvonne Christ, Sacre Copyright in Le Ras Dictionnaire de Paris 1964. David Harvey. Consciousness and the Urban Experience, Studies in the History and Theory of Capitalist Urbanization 1985. David Harvey. The Building of the Basilica of Sacre Copyright Coda to Paris, Capital of Modernity. Harvey made use of Hubert Rohault de Fleury. Historique de la Basilique du Sacre Copyright The Official History of the Building of the Basilica, in 4 volumes, printed, but not published. Raymond A. Jonas. A Euro Sacred Tourism and Secular Pilgrimage, and the Basilica of Sacre Copyright a Euro in Montmartre and the Making of Mass Culture. Gabriel P. Weisberg, editor. 2001.